Welcome, welcome. I'm Darcy Stowe here for a quick Facebook Live over your lunch break. We're going to wait and give a few seconds for people to join. I see people joining. This is great. We'll start here in a little while. As you have questions during our time today, please leave those in the comments. And we hope to have time at the end of our conversation to check into those or to comment later as we have time. Okay, let's get started. Thanks for joining us live on your lunch break. And it's lunch here in Oklahoma City, but we're from wherever you are. And if you're watching this later, welcome too. We're glad you're here. We are going to talk a little bit about listening and spoken language intervention. My name is Darcy Stowe. I am a listening and spoken language specialist and speech language pathologist at Hearts for Hearing in Oklahoma City. And we're just going to chat a little bit. Let's have a conversation about what is listening and spoken language intervention. What does that mean for my child with hearing loss? So we know babies born in 2021 have access to things that are innovative and unique and new that babies historically have not always had. So a baby born with hearing loss in 2021 is going to get a newborn hearing screening, likely, and is able to know, we're able to know very early in a baby's journey if they have a hearing loss and how much hearing loss they have. The technology we have access to in 2021 is state of the art. It's so much better with every year. So we're able to fit babies with hearing technology very early so they have access to sound to grow their brain for listening and spoken language. And we know the combination of early identification of hearing loss, wonderful technology, and appropriate intervention are exactly what a baby with hearing loss needs to be able to develop listening and spoken language. And you might be thinking, well, what about that? What is listening and spoken language therapy? What does it mean if my baby's going to be in therapy? So let's talk a little bit about that. You might have heard of auditory verbal therapy, listening and spoken language therapy. Those are synonymous. But the journey for children with hearing loss in intervention has looked very different over the years. And we know that the appropriate intervention for a child with hearing loss is what the parents choose. And 90% of babies born with hearing loss are born to two hearing parents. So a family that didn't know their baby was going to potentially have hearing loss. And then we know that more than 94% of caregivers are choosing listening and spoken language for their baby with hearing loss. Again, something that families are able to choose in 2021 that they weren't technically able to choose 40 or 50 years ago. So the options for children with hearing loss to communicate there are several options, but today we're going to talk about listening and spoken language therapy. That's my wheelhouse. That's the services that we provide at Hearts for Hearing, is growing a baby's brain for listening and spoken language and supporting the parent's choice in that. So we know hearing loss is not as much about the ears as it is about the brain. So when a baby is diagnosed with hearing loss, it is a neurodevelopmental emergency because it means access to the auditory centers of the brain is limited or gone. And when we know a baby has hearing loss, we are able to intervene early with technology and provide the sounds of spoken language to the baby quickly. That's really, really important. And I couldn't do my job as a listening and spoken language specialist without wonderful pediatric audiologists who know how to diagnose and know how to fit technology and know how to give babies' brains access to all sounds so they can grow into being a listener. So we know our brain grows the most from birth to 3 years of age. So when we think about optimizing listening and spoken language outcomes for children with hearing loss, the earlier the better. And you might be thinking, well, what does therapy look like with a baby? That's a great question. Therapy with a baby is a lot of coaching the caregivers. So some of our itty bitties will sleep during part of the session or need to eat during part of a therapy session. But it's all about empowering caregivers to be able to maximize their child's listening and spoken language potential. And if you look in the foundation, the guiding principles of listening and spoken language intervention, there are many of the principles that begin with the word guide and coach caregivers, because caregivers are who their baby is going to learn to listen and talk from. So bringing your baby with hearing loss to therapy doesn't create a listener and a talker, but equipping caregivers to be able to take strategies and goals and ideas home for all the other hours of the week. That's where the secret sauce is. So me as a professional, I decided to be a speech pathologist. And I decided to go to school for that. I decided to pursue a certification as a listening and spoken language specialist. And I have this passion that oozes from my soul for working with children with hearing loss. But if you stop to think about it, caregivers who have a baby born with hearing loss, did they choose that? Did they choose that journey? Did they choose that passion? No. So we are here in two very unique positions, but creating a team together to guide and coach caregivers is the ultimate goal of what we do in listening and spoken language therapy, to empower the caregivers in the nurturing of listening and spoken language with their little human. So I'm here as a team member. Nothing that we do as a listening and spoken language specialist is magic. It's just empowering. So you might be thinking, well, who can be a listening and spoken language specialist? That's a great question. We at Hearts for Hearing, our team of listening and spoken language specialists are all speech pathologists by trade. So we have our master's degree in speech pathology and then additional certifications in listening and spoken language, which takes another 3 years beyond your degree and full-time experience to achieve. Listening and spoken language specialists can also be audiologists or teachers of the deaf. It may depend on the community you live in or the center that you're near. But having that credential of a listening and spoken language specialist is not a small feat. So if you have a kiddo with hearing loss and you are looking for a connection to get them therapy and to get them services, looking for that extra specialization as a listening and spoken language specialist is critical, because if you find someone that has those letters, LSLS, behind their name, they didn't just get that because they took a 2-hour class. They put in thousands of hours and a big certification test and maintenance to get that. So you can be confident that they are going to provide the services and come along with you and support you on your journey toward developing listening and spoken language. Okay, so what else do we know about listening and spoken language therapy? We know we like to start early because of early brain growth. Caregivers are a critical part. I mean, it seems silly to think we would take a 12-month-old into a therapy room and do therapy with them and then bring them back out to their mom. Most kids wouldn't agree to that, and that is not foundational to what we do in listening and spoken language therapy. So I think you've heard me say guiding and coaching caregivers is important, hopefully. Partnering with a pediatric audiologist is another thing that we do quite often. So the work at Hearts for Hearing is unique in the fact that we have speech pathologists in one hallway and pediatric audiologists in the other hallway. And so we are able to have a close-knit team of professionals who are here to serve families. So not only the child with hearing loss, but the entire family, and support them in the journey. For most of them, it's a surprising journey of learning about hearing loss and learning how to overcome obstacles that might come along with that. And I think we're unique in that fact that we are able to partner closely as a team outside of here as well, with medical professionals and with school professionals and other providers in the community to serve kiddos. Our ultimate goal with listening and spoken language therapy is that children would be well equipped to enter the mainstream. So for a child who was diagnosed early with hearing loss, received appropriate technology early, has received appropriate interventions from a young age, and has no additional contributing factors that would be speed bumps in their journey, we would look forward to them being able to be mainstreamed with their peers, so with other kids of the same age, by pre-K or kindergarten. So that's kind of what maybe a typical journey would look like, an ideal journey would look like in listening and spoken language therapy. Let's talk a little bit about what does therapy look like? So I have my baby with hearing technology. I come to therapy. I'm a mom or a dad or a grandma. I'm a caregiver. What does therapy look like? Well, therapy is very focused on developmental milestones in listening, in speech, and in language, so in understanding and in using language. And in the early days, it's very centered around strategies to enhance those things at home. So we might talk about specific strategies for growing the brain to listen. One of those strategies is audition first. So letting the brain hear before it sees. So for example, we might talk about early commands like, "Where's Daddy?" And letting the baby hear that before I say, "Where is Daddy?" And giving a visual cue. So letting the child be, their auditory cortex have a chance at that comprehension before we add in other supplemental guides to understanding. Okay, it looks like we have a comment that has come through, a question. What is the main difference between speech therapy and listening and spoken language therapy? Great question. Listening and spoken language therapy is much more specialized and an additional certification that focuses on growing listening and spoken language in children with hearing loss. So as a speech pathologist, we are trained in our training to know a little bit about a whole lot of things. So as a speech pathologist by trade, we are trained we can focus on feeding issues. We can focus on swallowing disorders. We can work with patients who have had strokes to learn to communicate again. We can work with babies who are late talkers or learn differently. But when we think about speech therapy, that's kind of the big umbrella. And then when we talk about listening and spoken language therapy, that's taking a really close look at a subset of children and growing their communication in a really specific way. So that's a great, great question. Not all LISL providers are speech pathologists, and not all speech pathologists are listening and spoken language specialists. So, great question. All right, let's talk through a few more listening and spoken language strategies that we might use in a therapy session with a baby or a toddler. Another strategy might be one called acoustic highlighting. So that's where we can look at lots of different routines in our life, our daily routines, our play routines, our social routines, but being able to enhance listening in those environments. And sometimes when I talk about this strategy early on with a caregiver, we'll talk about, draw the metaphor or the parallel of reading a self-help book. And you have your highlighter out, or I do at least. Acoustic highlighting is very similar. It's drawing attention to certain nuances of sound in order to enhance that sound for the kiddo. So think about a baby in your life. Maybe it's your own baby. Maybe it's a niece or a nephew. Maybe it's a sibling. But when they're little and we tend to use that vocal quality with them of, I'm gonna get you, tickle, 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 I'm gonna get you. That's acoustic highlighting. So that's drawing attention, exaggeration to your speech to draw attention to it and listen to it. So we can use that strategy all throughout our life and throughout a child with hearing loss's life. But in the early stages, it's drawing attention to sound by whispering, by singing, by using mother ease, by just enhancing the sound so the child is more prone to listen and attend to it. Think about singing. Singing is the same way. We all, whether we're great singers or not, sing to babies. It's intuitive, but it's also such a listening thing that draws attention to our speech, whereas we might not otherwise. Keep the questions coming, guys. If you have more questions, post them in the comments because we're going to have time in a minute to address a few more of those. Okay, another huge part of listening in spoken language intervention is books. Did you know that 20,000 hours of listening in early childhood is critical for a child to become an independent reader? If you do the math in the first several years of life, in the first 4 years of life, that means on average, a kiddo needs to be listening 14 hours a day. So I wonder if wearing hearing technology is important if my baby has hearing loss. Yes, it is. And I wonder if wearing hearing technology during all waking hours is critical if I want my baby to maximize their listening in spoken language. Yes, it is. Because we know listening leads to talking. Talking leads to learning. That leads to reading. That leads to writing. All of these things build on top of each other to create and to maximize the potential of a kiddo who will someday be an adult. And all that we do in those first 3 years of life makes critical difference in their journey in this world. So books are a big deal. Books in therapy. We will start reading books very early on and guiding and coaching parents to read aloud to their kids as much as they can and to integrate literature into intervention sessions so it becomes a part of what we do and it grows language. Did you know that books provide vocabulary that we can't possibly expose our children to? We have a finite, limited number of experiences in the area that we live in, but books create worlds that take us geographically far away without leaving our home or without leaving our therapy room. So we're able to have more diverse vocabularies just by reading, just by getting books, just by exploring our environment through books. If you guys are interested, we're going to have a family support group tonight for any of our Hearts for Hearing families, and we're going to talk more about reading out loud and how we can do that across the years. That's going to be tonight. Comment if you'd like more information. I wish you guys had microphones and you could comment live. This would be more of a conversation. No, we are so glad you're here. Okay, keep your comments coming in the comments section and keep your questions coming. We would love to be able to take a chance to answer more of those. Another question you might have, I'm putting questions in your mouth. Another question you might have is my child too old for listening and spoken language therapy? Or how long do we do therapy with a child who's born with hearing loss? And I think it's a great question that there's not a real answer to. So we as a listening and spoken language team are here to support you in your journey. And for children who are born with hearing loss, who are diagnosed early, fit with technology early, and hearing loss is their main diagnosis and the main thing in their journey that we're really targeting. Kiddos with that kind of journey might be in listening and spoken language therapy for 3 years, for 4 years prior to their transition into the mainstream. Now we know 40% of children born with hearing loss have another diagnosis. So maybe they have trouble with their vision. Maybe they have muscle trouble. Maybe they have other things, and hearing loss is not their top priority. Now, at Hearts for Hearing, we do help these kiddos with additional needs to maximize their listening and spoken language potential as much as we can. And when we reach the limits of our capacity, we will refer and make the team bigger. So referring to other specialists who can help grow that child's listening capabilities, even if spoken language is not going to be their outcome. Okay, I have another question that just came through the comments. Why the letter E? I'm wondering what that means. Oh, did I say Mother E? If I did, I meant to say Mother E's. Guess what? Sometimes I talk too fast, and it's a problem, and that might be what just happened. I said Mother E's when I should have said that more clearly, or Parent E's. So that sing-song voice that mommies, daddies, caregivers tend to use when a baby is young. If that's not what you meant by that question, whoever asked that in the comments, can you clarify? Thanks. Is it important, another question, is it important to talk correctly and not use baby talk? Great question. It is important to talk to your baby. Are you going to hurt them by using baby talk? It would depend on what you meant by baby talk. If baby talk means Mother E's, like, are you ready to go see Grandma? Let's get in your car seat. Not going to hurt them. If by baby talk you mean dumbing down what you say to talk to your baby, like, Grandma, go, now? Yeah, that's not cool. That's not natural. We know that more than 90% of what babies learn, they learn incidentally. So they need to be hearing words in a variety of contexts, in a variety of ways. Think about it, this is a great analogy, but think about it as if you were trying to learn a new language by going to a different country. If you wanted to know the word apple and you were visiting Spain, you might go to the grocery store and stand by the apples or buy an apple cart at an open air market. And you would hear native speakers use that word in a variety of contexts. Apples, apples for sale. Do you want an apple? We have red apples, yellow apples, green apples. And soon your brain would learn some word barriers and pretty soon pick up on what that word is that goes with that fruit. And that's exactly what a baby is doing. Their brain is soaking up words from the beginning once they get adequate access to sound. And so we need to talk to our babies because their brain is soaking it up like a sponge and filing it away for later use. We know children understand language long before they speak it, and that's one of those things. You can't talk to your baby enough. So is it important to talk correctly? Yes. Is it important to talk to your 2-month-old like you do your adult friends? Not all the time. How's that for a non-answer? Okay, do we have any clarification on the letter E? Okay. Keep your comments coming. I see them. I wonder if there's something important that we have left out. We have a few more minutes together, so if you have another comment or question, please post it, and we will do our best to tackle it. Okay, I will start with a synopsis, but I hear another question coming. So, just to cover everything we talked about today, listening and spoken language therapy alone isn't what creates a difference in a child with hearing loss learning to listen and talk. It's early brain development and capitalizing on early brain development by getting a newborn hearing screening, knowing quickly after that, does my baby have hearing loss? Meeting a pediatric audiologist who can give my baby access to listening and spoken language with appropriate technology, and joining with a listening and spoken language specialist along the journey. So collaboration is so important. But who's the most important players in a baby's life as they learn to listen and talk? Definitely the caregivers. They're the real MVPs, guys. That's you and I, without hearing loss, that's how we learn to listen and talk. And for a child with hearing loss, it is no different. They get a team of professionals to support them, to come alongside them in the journey, to help them, to guide and coach them on how can we make sure my baby can listen and talk and meet their full potential. Okay, I have another question that's come through. How long does a child go to therapy? My quick and easy answer to that would be as long as they need it. But if for a baby who is following a typical developmental trajectory, they typically, with early intervention, so with intervening in those early years of brain growth, they typically transition out of speech therapy about the time they enter the mainstream. But it's just individual. You know, we don't ever want to treat a child with hearing loss as a stereotype, but meeting the caregivers and the child where they need us, and us supporting them as long as they need that support is critical. I hear another question coming. Are there apps to help caregivers support their child's listening and spoken language needs? Great question. And this might be one that we can gain knowledge from additional participants. If you guys want to get active in the comments and join there with some suggestions on apps that you might have. But there's some good websites. Hearts for Hearing's website has resources. Hearingfirst.org is a great website for resources. And then there are some typical developmental milestone apps as well that you can register for and put your baby's birthday in, and they will send you as frequent as you want reminders about, remember your 3-month-old is to kind of chart the progress of developmental milestones, not only speech and language. That's a great question. Okie dokie, we have maybe less than a minute for any other comments or questions that you have. I just want to give a huge shout out to those who have joined us live, and to Hearts for Hearing and the whole listening and spoken language team, all of the staff at Hearts for Hearing who are here on a daily basis to support you in your journey and with you and your child with hearing loss. If you have any questions or concerns about your child, please feel free to reach out and call us or send us a message through the website or comment here. If you're needing resources in your area, we'd be happy to connect you with those as well. Okay, guys, this is me signing off. We'll see you again another day.